Good morning. My name is Pearson. I'm Head of Economics and Business at Queen Mary's Grammar School here in Walsall in the West Midlands. We're really proud to be involved in the Be in Business initiative. I'm delighted that our boys here who are with me from my Year 10 GCSE business groups are really excited to be interviewing Tessy today, finding a bit more about your career journey, what inspired you. So I'll introduce you to the boys who are with me today. We've got William, Manav, Liam, Zachariah and Tanvir. And Tessy, I know they've got some great questions for you this morning. So I think without further ado, shall I hand back to you, Tessy?
Sure, it's a huge pleasure to be with you guys, and please be kind with your questions. I feel like you guys are fully prepped, but I'm excited to talk to you and just to hear your questions and to throw some questions to you guys as well. So just quickly, a bit of intro to myself. I'm the Chief Exec of the Diana Award, but beyond that, I often see myself as a civil society leader because I wear various hats. So my fully day job is leading the Diana Award, which is a charity legacy to Princess Diana, a charity that really champions young people. Our mission really focuses on driving change for young people and tackling 3 key issues around mental well-being for young people, removing the social and economic barriers young people face. But much more important is making sure that young people voices are part of reshaping society. And so we want to make sure that the voices of young people are platformed across every sector in society. So that's my day job. My other non-paid roles, but which equally take my time, is that I chair the I Will Fund. The I Will Fund is it's a pot of money that's been allocated, that's been contributed from both the Big Lottery and the Department for the DCMS, Culture, Media and Sports. It's a 70 million funds that's completely earmarked for young people, making sure that young people have access to social action, that when we platform the voices of young people, that actually we're resourcing that so that young people can across the country can really shape their own communities. And what we do is allocate funds to this. So I'm the chairperson for that fund, and it's a real privilege to be able to say, put our money where our mouth is in that sense. I'm also a board member of Comic Relief. As you guys know, Comic Relief is about tackling poverty, and the way we do that is we raise money through entertainment, which is fun, but more importantly, whilst we raise money through fun and TV, we also make sure that that money goes into tackling poverty across the world. And then I have some other hats. I sit on various boards, but yeah, that's kind of me. It's something that I'm incredibly passionate about. Oh yeah, my other role is that I'm a mom to 2 young people and a wife. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Fantastic, Tessy. Very busy, and I'm really pleased that you've given it the time to join us. So I'm going to hand over to our boys and to start the questioning this morning. So William, if you want to go, thank you.
Hi, I'm Will. I'm a GCSE business student here, and I'd just like to ask you, how did it all start with you setting up the Diana Award?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking that. So firstly, the first thing to say is that I didn't start the Diana Award. The Diana Award was a government memorial. So when Princess Diana passed away, they set up a committee that really wanted to look at ways to remember her by. And so the committee came up with the idea of this charity, and that's how I came in. So whilst it wasn't my original idea, but I had the privilege of curating what that looks like. And for me, I think the funding thing that we've always held on to was that Princess Diana across her life was incredibly passionate about young people. We knew that young people were always at the center of what she did. And so And when we looked at her history and her record, it was obvious that she also cared, not necessarily across her life, even when it wasn't about young people, she was focused on the forgotten, people who weren't always in the mainstream media. Like when we look at the work she did around AIDS, the whole world thought that AIDS, there was a lot of myth around AIDS. And she's brought a spotlight to that. So it was easy to understand that if we were going to look at young people, we were going to focus on the issues that are sometimes hidden, like mental health. People didn't often talk about that. So that really was kind of, that's our founding belief. So our belief is that young people deserve the power or have the power to change the world. Our role is to build their capacity to do that.
And I do think your work with young people is very important, and inspiring young people is crucial to the future of our society. So can I just ask on that point, who or what first inspired you to start out in business?
Oh, that's a good question. So do you know what? I think that your life is always a tapestry of various things. I feel like we go through life in seasons, and there's various influences you have. So when I was younger, I was always influenced by, I hated injustice. I was always acutely aware that there was always injustice around me. And that really was something that, that I was aware of. When I was about 13, I had a best friend who I realized that my best friend's brother suffered with sickle cell anemia. And that was the first time I came in contact with that illness. I also realized that there was no cure at the time. And there was no cure, not because there couldn't be cure, but because there wasn't enough investment. Again, that was a pointer to some form of injustice. So that really inspired me to go on and study sciences. So I studied biochemistry for my first degree. So there were lots of influence. My parents were a huge influence. Sometimes today in my life, I look at young people inspire me a lot. I'm very inspired by just the sheer tenacity, the resilience that I see young people. I say to people that a lot of my ideas originate from young people, because you guys see life from such a different perspective, and that really inspires me. So it's a whole tapestry of various things.
Did you face any barriers in achieving your success? And if you did, how did you overcome them?
Did I face any barriers? So I suppose, so in some sense, yes. So like I said, I studied biochemistry, my first degree, and when I graduated and had my first job, I realized that I absolutely hated working as a biochemist. So that was a big problem, because I had spent 3 years at university studying this degree, and now I didn't know what to do, because I realized I was more of a people person, and being a scientist was probably not going to be my calling in life. And so the problem was, how do I pivot? What do I do? And I remember really sitting with my brother, who was slightly older than me, and really thinking, help me out here, what do I do? And he had just completed a master's in business administration. And he said, Tessy, I think you should do this, because that opens up more opportunities for you. So that was a moment where I had to pivot and really think about where I thought my trajectory was going to be down being a scientist, but actually the reality was I didn't quite enjoy that. So I think, but I often see that challenges are a moment where you have to pause. That I don't often see challenge as, oh my God, this is the end of the world. I see it as, okay, pause, stop, jump off the treadmill and reflect. And how do we pivot? What do you need to do?
Finally, how did your education support your success as it is today?
So I'm a proud geek. I absolutely love education. I often say to people, actually, particularly like adults, that the day you stop learning, that's the day you need to be archived, like you're gone. I feel like education is vital. It's vital to growth, it's vital to innovation, it's vital to your thinking as a business leader. So like I said, I studied biochemistry for my first degree. I went on to do an MBA, but I have never really stopped learning. Like, I'm always looking out I remember when my daughter was sitting her GCSEs and she was doing psychology, and I thought, oh my goodness, I love psychology. And I feel like I practically did her A-level psychology alongside her, because I was literally consuming all of that learning. Learning is so important. I can never, one of the things that I do even as a business leader is make sure every year we have an allocation to every staff member, a budget for their personal development that's about learning. And every year people have to demonstrate what they've learned. We also have as an organization what we call Lunch and Learn, which means once a month we bring everyone together. And if you've gone off to learn, so for example, you've done a course in Agile or Scrum, you have to come back and teach the entire organization. So learning never stops, and that's how you grow.
I think those are really interesting ideas. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Manav. I'm also a GCSE student here, and I've got a couple questions for you. The first one is, who other than yourself is vital to the success of the Diana Award?
Wow. So I believe in the we. Like nobody, literally. There's a saying that says, if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, you go together, you go in the company of others. There's an entire village that creates success. There can never be an individual, because you have to be greater than the sum of yourself to achieve success. So I would say I have a great team behind me. We have great supporters. But like I said earlier, young people are a core part of our work. You guys, when we see the results, that inspires us to do more. Young people feed into every level of governance when it comes to the business. So we have youth voice, we have young people on our trustee board. It means that we are constantly listening to the voices of young people, and that contributes to the success of the business or the charity. So there's everybody, there's an entire village behind me that makes the business work.
I like that you mentioned a lot of other people helped you with your business and success. So it leads on to my next question, which is, what one person has had the most influence on your career choices and why?
Oh, that's a big question. Wow. So I would probably like I said, I'll break my career into different chunks. I would look at when I was first starting out, like I said, I didn't quite enjoy biochemistry, and my brother was really instrumental in helping me pivot and move on to study business. That really allowed me to come out of my sector. But that learning or studying at my MBA was critical in allowing me to join any sector, because I could move to any sector. And that was really fundamental in kind of where I am today. But I would also say that there was a part of my career that was hugely demanding on myself as a female, as a mother, and I couldn't have done most of the things that I did without having the support of my husband, who also would say, look, if you have to work late nights, that's fine. I've got this. And I think as a partnership, that really was important for me to that gave me the space to do what I needed to do. But I often believe that, you know, across life, you have to have mentors. You know, I'm a huge believer in mentorship, and you need to, every 5 years, I look at what season am I in right now? Who do I need? Who is the mentor that I need to help me navigate the season? So I've had the pleasure of, I've had the honor of having various people who act as mentors, maybe people I chat to once a year, but I brainstorm big ideas with, and they help me through that.
That's really interesting how you have a lot of people helping you and that you accept help from others. But on the other hand, how did you deal with those who didn't believe in you?
So do you know what? I feel like the world is so big. You have to be able to not everyone comes on your journey. Like, you're on a journey, and not everybody would come along, and it's okay. You know, it's absolutely okay. There are people who perhaps I often look at it that there's before I say that, I'm going to say this, that you have to, as a business person, someone who's growing, you have to be intentional about who you share your vision with. There are people who are vision killers naturally because of how they see life, and therefore they're not the best people to go and share a vision with, because you don't want to kill before it even starts. And so be careful. This is why I talk about navigating, being careful about who do I need at this stage in my life. But also, even if it's someone you trust, and they say, oh God, I don't believe this, you have to take it with a pinch of salt, because sometimes they see it from their perspective and they don't see your perspective. You have to ask yourself, how can I make this work? I often like disproving the naysayers because I think they add wind to my wings and they just help me fly.
My final question is, how has the work with Comic Relief shaped the ways in which you work today?
Comic Relief is an interesting one for me because it gives me global perspective, so the Diane Award is a UK-wide charity. We do a bit of work globally, but we don't intensively do a lot of work in, say, the global south or in some parts of the world, whereas Comic Relief helps me see that big picture of what's happening across the world. And like I said, it's about perspective, which is incredibly important because I think if anything, the pandemic has shown us that the borders that we have in our country, it's invincible. Like we are really just one big world, even though we're segmented by boundaries, they don't really exist in real life. So Comic Relief is so important for me because it allowed me to see what's happening in Global South, what's happening in Africa, and how can we almost begin to think about the children in those countries and how can we help create interventions before those children become adults. So it's a key part of my life and I enjoy that job, that role.
Thank you for answering my question.
You're most welcome. Thank you for your questions.
Thank you.
Good morning, Tessy. My name's Liam. And my first question for you is, why do you think business matters? And why do you think students should learn about business?
Oh my goodness, like business matters because that's how, firstly, I'm going to say this, that life runs by business. Some businesses I run a not-for-profit, which means that even if we make money, we put the money back into our charitable causes, into our mission. We have no shareholders that take the money, but ultimately it is still a business. It is still about exchange of resources. You have to pay people, you have to have people to help achieve your mission. So across the world, we operate by business. Our world is very transactional, and when there's a transaction going on, that's business. Which learning how to navigate that, learning how to work with people, how to manage people, how to bring people alongside you, learning how to communicate your business mission, vision, or your product. All of those skills are important in our everyday life. Like if I said to you today, tell me why you love your school, you are trying to sell me your school. That's business, right? And those are skills that are everyday skills, or skills that we also need in business.
Oh, thank you for the response. How do you feel your experiences as a woman of colour have affected your career and your motivations? In
terms of my motivations, being a female or a woman of colour had nothing to do with what motivated. Like I said, from a very young age, I was acutely aware of injustice in society generally. So that really was something that made me want to create change. But as I grew older, I'm acutely aware, for example, that in the workplace or in businesses, there are specific challenges that face women, and more so women of color. For example, I talked earlier about the women and the conflicting responsibilities that you have, especially maybe as a wife, as a mother. And what you find in business is a lot of women, when you have those conflicts, a lot of women check out of business, they check out of the workplace because there's a pressure. Women are more under pressure to be a homemaker than a man. And so what you find generally is people feel that pressure to check out. And it makes me want to support many more women. So every year, for example, I mentor 5 female early career women, because I'm aware that the chances are they're likely to come under pressure, either called mom guilt or whatever. They face barriers in the workplace that perhaps men don't face. And of course, we know from the last couple of years that there are structural barriers that face people from racialized communities, when it comes to employment. And so I'm acutely aware, one of the things I do as well as a business leader or as a civil society leader is work with companies to make sure that we are very conscious of the policies that we make, that we look at our recruitment policies, that we are not creating barriers unnecessarily for particularly people from racialized communities. So as a leader now, I'm aware of those barriers, and I constantly, I am intentional about helping organizations change to make sure that nobody's left behind.
Thank you. On the topic of representation, what is your view on whether the business sector is representative and inclusive of all children and young people, and how can we improve things?
So yeah, that's a really good one. And I think that comes back to what I was saying earlier. So one of the things that we do at the Diana Award is make sure that we run a mentoring program. And the point of the mentoring is career mentoring. We encourage business leaders to give up time to mentor young people. And the point of that is making sure that young people of every background, particularly young people who perhaps come from workless families, have exposure to a range of careers. Because what happens a lot of the time is if you have no one, for example, in your family who's ever had a job in an office, as a young person, you're unlikely to want to even aspire for that because you have no exposure to that. And so it's so important. So we say to companies, and we have a range of companies across the UK who are involved in this mentoring, that it's incredibly important that we look after the pipeline. We need a diverse workforce. You cannot have a workforce that only thinks in one dimensional. We all have different views, different insights, and all of that brings about richness in a business. And we constantly champion businesses that it's a disadvantage to a business if your workforce is not diverse. You are missing out on perspectives. You are missing out on voices that would help promote your business. And I think coming back to today's young person, I think that young people are also, my employees tell me that a lot, that they look at who's in that business, who are the employees before they choose to join a business. So businesses would lose out on talents if their workforce isn't diverse.
Good morning, Tessy. My name is Zachariah Hassan, and I am a Year 10 student, and I'm studying business GCSE. Today I have a few questions for you, which hopefully you'll be able to answer. Okay, so can you tell us any ways you are working to improve diversity and inclusion in the future of business? And is there anything that you would like to do?
For sure. So, I think that a key way to improve diversity definitely is through mentorship. Absolutely. Making sure that we employ that businesses have a duty to be reflective of their population. So if you are a business that sells water, everyone consumes water, you have to, your workforce should be reflective of the communities that you serve. And that's key. So in terms of making sure, like I said earlier, we constantly champion that businesses do that. I think in terms of schools as well, is making sure that every young person, I believe that every young person, irrespective of what school they go to, should have enough exposure to careers, to a range of careers. They should have access to at least I believe that every young person should, especially from year 9, 10, and 11, should at least have work experience every single year of their life, because that again gives you the opportunity to determine what sector you want to go to.
100%, I fully agree with what you said there. And first of all, I would like to say that the work that you have done so far is very commendable and very respectable. But moving on to my next question, is there anything that you would have done differently in your career?
Oh, that's a good one. I tell you what, so my, like I said earlier, I studied biochemistry, but when my daughter got to her A-levels and was studying psychology, I loved psychology. And I think if I had studied psychology, I would have loved to, if I could go back and redo my first degree, maybe I would have done that. My son then went on to study PPE, and I thought, oh my goodness, perfect. So if I could do anything differently, I would not study biochemistry, I would study PPE, because I think that would, so my work now involves shaping policy, advocating for policy change, but also looking at, obviously economics is important because it's about making sure that I run a successful business, but also understanding the effect of policy on human lives, which is where philosophy, psychology comes in. So if I could change anything, I would go back and do a degree in PPE. But I wouldn't change what I'm doing right now. I would just change what I studied.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. Moving on to my last question, do you have any advice for those starting out and looking towards working around the issues of social justice and equality?
Yes, I would. That's a really good. Any advice for those starting and working towards? I would say that, find your why. Why do you want to do this? Listen, it is exhausting. Sometimes you're trying, I mean, let's take, for example, just last night, there was a shooting in the US. And if you are a campaigner in the US and you're trying to fight for gun reforms, you've probably been doing this for like 100 years and you still haven't got change. There is fatigue. It is exhausting. You have to be able to hold on to your why. Why are you doing this? What is your motivation? Are you doing this so that you can look like a hero? Are you doing this so that you can be a savior? If that's your reason, you will burn out and you will get frustrated, because this is not about heroism. This is not about saviorism. This is about equity, and you have to understand what's your motivation. And so get your motivation right. And then that for me, that would be the key thing, because sometimes it's a thankless job, because the people you're trying to push, the policies changes you're trying to push against, there are people who don't agree with that, and so sometimes you hit opposition in that sense. But hold on to your why, celebrate the little milestones. If you win one person over, get a business over, that's a milestone. So learn to celebrate the little milestones, but focus on your why.
Of course, yeah, motivation is very important in not just business, but in every aspect of life. It was a pleasure interviewing you, and that's all my questions.
Thank you so much for your questions.
Good morning, Tessy. My name is Tan Vijuda. I'm a Year 10 student taking the course of GCSE Business. And for my first question, I would like to ask, what leadership advice would you give to young aspiring leaders such as me?
That's a really good question. Leadership advice. Firstly, I would say leadership is bigger than yourself. You cannot be a leader thinking about the I. It's got to be about the we. Leadership for me, it's about creating the right ecosystem that allows everybody else around you to problem solve. If you're the only problem solver, you will stunt your own growth. You need people around you who would help you problem solve. You cannot be the hero. It cannot be about you. You cannot be, oh yeah, the solution to everything. Build a right team, build the right ecosystem so that everybody else around you is a problem solver. I would also say that leadership is about taking risk. You have to take risk, but make sure that it's calculated risk. And when it fails, it's okay. It's not failure, it's about learning. You learn from that and you pivot and you grow. The third and maybe final thing I would say is leadership is also about growth. You cannot afford to remain still. Be very aware of your competitors. Innovate, innovate, innovate.
Thank you. I do agree with all those points. The next question I would ask, where next? What are your business aims for the next 5 years?
My answer to this question is, do you know what? Our work is, for me, my mission is about driving change for children and young people. And as long as there's children being born every single second, globally, it's never done. So whilst I know that I'm not even going to kid myself to think I would create change for every single child in the world, but as long as there's a child being born and there's still inequality in the world, we keep pushing the barriers, we keep pushing for change. Change also changes. The issues changes every few years. And for us, it's about making sure that we are close to the issues that young people face. So for example, one of the things we've done as a charity is respond to the needs of young people on the back of the pandemic, because the pandemic created challenges for children. Who knows what's going to happen in 5 years? So in 5 years, this is about change as well. In 5 years, the problems might be different. Again, we pivot, we change to reflect the needs at that time. So the work is never, ever done. And it's about making sure that every child has equal access, that equity, that we're able to achieve equity for children and young people.
I've got to say, that's really amazing. It's really nice to hear that. But for my final question, I would like, is there any other topics that we haven't asked you or questions that you would like to talk about?
I suppose I want to flip it back to you, and I would love to hear you get your views about what are you looking for from leadership? Like firstly, what leaders inspire you guys, and what type of leaders do you see yourselves becoming?
Personally, like, some people that inspire me. I like the leaders and people who like to make change, such as yourself, because I think it's very important where, as you mentioned before, to have everyone to be equal and have the same amount of equity, because I believe if there's an injustice, that creates problems. And I think that by everyone being equal, it will cause the less problems in sort of business and just the bigger world in general.
For sure, absolutely.
Thank you very much for your time.
You're most welcome. Thank you for your questions.
I would just like to mention a few closing words. It was a pleasure interviewing you, and it was an honor interviewing you. And I say this on behalf of the whole of QM. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. I've loved chatting to you, and I'm literally looking out for you guys because I think you guys will be great leaders. And please keep doing what you do.
Thank you.
And all the best with your GCSEs as well, and A-levels and all that stuff.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Tessy. It's really good to hear from you. I think they were good at the end, dodging the question as well. They quickly moved on. I think there's probably a career in politics for this young man here. I think it's been really inspiring to hear from you. And I mean, if you've got any more questions for them, please fire away, because I'm sure they'd love to contribute to anything else.
So there's a question I actually asked, and I'm just going to rephrase that question that I asked earlier. Obviously we're all seeing what's happening in our world. We see Partygate from our leaders. We see what's happening in the US and just across the world. And I actually asked the question on my Twitter the other day about what sort of leaders are we looking for going forward? Are we looking for leaders who are charismatic, or are we looking for leaders who lead with values? And that's a question that still bugs me. Are we choosing leaders based on their ability to communicate effectively and to win us over with their beautiful words, and do not think about, and we're not bothered about their own personal values? Or are we going forward? Are we focused on values-based leadership? So I really want each of you to answer that if we still have time.
Yeah, of course. I think we should base who we make our leaders on. It should be based on a lot of things. I think it should be based on like that. I think a lot of the time leaders, we can say that some of them don't have. There's a lot of corruption and I think there should be more justice for less corruption, and there should be people such as you, Tessy, who are activists who fight against the wrong and fight against corruption, and hopefully we should try and make this world a better place.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
I think leaders should all be about their core values instead of their charisma and how they look to public. Their core values inspire young children the most instead of how they look. and it's not as important, I think, than their core values. Yeah, that's my answer.
Cool, thank you.
I think we need more leaders like in society now that admit they've done wrong and try to help like rebuild what they've done wrong and show people that it's okay to make mistakes, but just don't lie about it and show what you've really done.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Personally, I think with our leaders, I think there needs to be more leaders that actually listen to the public. I think with that, like it will cause like a lot of less problems. How like such as like previously like the BLM protest. I think that it was great how much people were finally trying to fight for it. However, I do think there's still that corruption with like police officers. I think that by getting a leader that will be able to convey the message correctly, I think that will cause a lot of like less problems and like get rid of corruption.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
I think leaders should really be about change, because in the past 20 or so years, there hasn't really been much change, and it's clear that something isn't working in society, and we do need to move forward from that. But I think the best leaders don't necessarily have to be party political or in government. Like recently, Marcus Rashford, while I may not agree with him on football matters, he has really inspired change, and it's not necessarily his job, but I do admire that he cares enough about people that he would fight for change.
100%. I think that's I think you summed it up. Best leaders don't really. I actually read a book once about leaders without positions. And actually the best leaders are those who don't, leaders without titles. And you don't have to have a title to be a leader. I love that.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.